Welcome to Alaska EdVenture, Lessons from the K-12 Frontier, with your host, Dr. Meinert, Superintendent of the Fairbanks North Starborough School District. This podcast is your gateway to the heart of Alaska's educational landscape, where each episode features guests sharing their unique perspectives. We are bringing together voices that shape education in the last frontier. Join us as we explore the challenges, triumphs, and innovations in Alaska's K-12 classrooms.
Welcome to episode number 3 of the podcast. Super excited to be here. I'm Luke Meinert. I'm the superintendent here in the Fairbanks North Starborough School District, and I have a couple amazing educators with me. To my very left, Assistant Superintendent of Elementary Schools, Kate LaPlaunt, and to her left, and my left as well, we've got Executive Director of Teaching and Learning, Chane. And so great to have you on the podcast today. You guys have done a tremendous amount of work around the Alaska Reads Act. And so the podcast today is going to focus on the Alaska Reads Act, maybe a little bit of science of reading and how all that is going. It's, if anybody's been following the education sphere here in Alaska, there's been a lot of talk about Alaska Reads, and here in Fairbanks specifically, the importance of literacy this school year. And so for those listening that haven't maybe been super engaged in the conversation, what is the Alaska Reads Act?
The Reads Act actually was passed, not this past summer, but summer of 2022. It started this past summer. And basically, it sets out 4 different things. But the thing that we're most thinking about is the idea that every school district has to have a reading intervention plan. The goal of the whole act is to make sure that kids can learn to read by 3rd grade. So we'll give them as much support as we can up to 3rd grade and beyond. Mm-hmm. But the goal is to have them reading by 3rd grade.
Okay, well, I think everybody can get behind that, right? So, we all want our students to be literate. There's a lot of importance around that. What are some things that we're doing differently now because of the Alaska Reads Act than we've done in previous years or previously in the school district?
So it's not that we've never done these things before, but we are doing them with a renewed focus and energy. But we are definitely working on creating interventions for all students, K through 3 and beyond. The Alaska Reads Act specifically requires us to do K through 3. We know that students if they didn't get what they needed in 3rd grade, we're going to give it to them in 4th grade, 5th grade, 6th grade, middle school, high school. So we as a district are looking at this as a K-12 focus, although the Alaska Reads Act specifically talks K-3. But we want to have the focus be our entire district. So what we're doing is we're layering different types of interventions. We are assessing students where they are. We're determining what types of interventions they might need. And then we're checking back in with them over the course of the year to see how they're progressing. Maybe they've made progress and they still need support, but in a different capacity. Maybe they've made enough progress that they don't need that kind of support and they can be back in with the entire, the general group and progressing at their grade level. And so we're really looking at what their needs are and trying to assess that along the school year.
I love that. One of the words you mentioned in there quite a few times is interventions. And I feel like interventions is a very academic term. So when you say interventions, what does that mean?
It can be a variety of things. We have a whole lot of tools in our toolkit. We have UFly. I'm going to throw out a lot of words,
sure.
And we would have to kind of decode them for you. But we have our core curriculum, which is our first thing. That's for everybody. And then we have within the core curriculum, there's differentiated materials for kids that maybe need things broken down a little bit more, or maybe are at the advanced level. And then we have lots of different programs. Some of those programs are electronic programs, and some of those are very personal programs where you sit down with a teacher or a tutor, and they're maybe working with a group of 3 to 6 kids, and they're going through a very scripted program. So we have a variety of programs. They have a whole host of names. UFly, Phonics for Reading. You mentioned Amira, Waggle. So they all come with kind of names.
Yep.
Go ahead.
It might be helpful to think about interventions in a non-school way.
Yeah.
To help folks think about it. Anytime we go to the doctor and the doctor finds out that, I have high blood pressure or whatever the thing is, and the doctor gives me medicine, or the doctor says, go to the gym more, that's an intervention. There's something that I need to work on, and it's specifically for me. If you want to think about it for younger kids, if my grandson comes up here when he's about 4 or 5 and he doesn't know how to tie his shoe, I can show him how to tie a shoe again, but he doesn't need to practice the whole thing because he gets some of it.
Yeah.
But what he didn't really understand, and I remember this so vividly, is that he knew that he had to put a loop, but he was putting the loop way too high on the string. And all he had to do was to put the loop down low on the string and then loop it around. And then he knew exactly what to do. He needed that one little intervention to say, you don't have to redo the whole thing. Just think about this one spot, and then that will help him get to where he needs to be. Reading is the same way. We're providing an intervention, something very specific. We see a struggle in this space. We're going to work on this space.
I love that. And then there's some progress monitoring in there, right? So we know when they're making that progress, and then we can move on to new skills that the student needs to learn.
Mm-hmm.
That's great. So a lot of times with the Alaska Reads Act, I hear this term science of reading intertwined with that. And so I'm curious your guys' thoughts of the intersection between the science of reading and the Alaska Reads Act.
You want to take that, or do you want me to start off with that?
Oh, and Kate brought some props. I like that.
The science of reading kind of refers to the grouping of various studies over the last 50 years as far as how do kids read. And all these studies took place all across the U.S. Folks then started seeing that there are some commonalities in these studies. And when you bring these things together, we think about how does their brain work when we learn how to read, because our brains are hardwired to learn language, but they're not hardwired to learn reading. So we had to come up with and we have a systematic way of teaching reading, because everyone learns to read in their brain the same way. It's not, and so there are many ways where different kids learn to read differently, learn to learn differently, but kids learn to read the same way.
Yeah, I think that was definitely one of the surprises for me as I learned a little bit more of the science of reading. I always thought there was numerous different pathways to the ability to learn how to read, and really we've learned that that's not the case, that everybody learns to read the same way.
They might have come at it from different perspectives, from different starting places, but once reading is happening, the same mechanisms are at play. And one of the ways we can look at that is through the simple view of reading. So word recognition plus or times language comprehension equals reading comprehension. So reading is all about making meaning from these symbols, right? So I have these little pictographs on the paper, that's the letters, and they're just puzzles. But once I can put them in my brain and put them together and they make sounds, and I say that sound out loud, and that sound, I say it and it says boat, and I know what a boat is, that's reading. I had the letters, I sounded them out, I said that sound had meaning to me because I could connect it to a vocabulary word, that vocabulary word meant something to me, and so I had reading comprehension. And that's the simple view of reading. So we talk about that in the science of reading. And then if we want to get a little bit more or a lot more complicated, we have what's called the Scarborough's rope. So a lot of people are getting introduced to this. And this talks about the decoding components of that reading and then all the comprehension components of reading. So there's lots of things that come together. So once reading is happening, all these things have converged together. And what we want to do is be really intentional about making sure that kids get that foundation and not leaving it up to chance and not leaving it up to, well, some kids get it and some kids don't. We want every kid to get the opportunity for that, which means that we're going to make sure that those foundational skills are there, the decoding, the phonics, the sight recognitions of the little parts of the speech and those sounds that they make, so that when they say those words and that sounds, they can connect it to their vocabulary.
I love that. So I guess one of the things that comes up in my mind when you're talking about all this, it seems like a fairly sizable shift for our school district, some educators. Like, how are we putting all this into motion? Like, when our educators come to us either out of teacher prep programs or maybe they've been with us for 20 years, is the science of reading new to them? And if it is, what types of things are we doing for professional learning for our educators?
Mm-hmm. I would say some of it seems new, but a lot of it seems very, very much the way either we learned it or our kids have learned it or our teachers are doing it right now. But some things are different. We are providing lots of PD for it. As a matter of fact, across the state is asking that every teacher have a reading endorsement So that's a class that they take, so they can learn the science of reading, and then put it into their classroom. So, and that's actually we're really lucky that that's being paid for by the state right now. The teachers just have to kind of sign up for it. And I do want to say, thinking about the teachers and all the new things that they're doing, I want to thank the teachers because they're doing a lot of things. And right now, I know it could feel like and is that there's just like a lot of new things on their plate, and they're working hard on it. They're working really hard on it right now. They're working hard on giving the M class and the MAP. And we can tell because we're getting calls and they're saying, well, how do we do this? And then how do we do that? So I want to thank the teachers very much because they're working hard on this thing, even though they might be a little bit out of their comfort zone and they might not be used to it.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to echo the sentiments. I'm sure Kate was going to jump in there with the same thing. But as I've traveled around the schools, I mean, they are working tremendously hard at making sure that they're administering all the new assessments that we've got, administering the new reading program that we have, and working really hard to focus on this intentional focus of literacy for our students. And not that they haven't in every year, but man, they're going above and beyond this year. And so we just really want to thank them for that because it's always hard as we're implementing new things or trying new strategies. That's our teachers out in the field doing that work.
Mm-hmm.
I think what I would add to that is while it is hard, I'm continually impressed with the enthusiasm and the dedication that they're bringing to it. It feels like people are like, yes, this is the right work to be doing. And they feel like it reinvigorates their love of education because they know that this is what the kids need right now.
Absolutely. And, as I've traveled around the district, I've definitely seen that. And we've had a lot of parent nights recently, open houses that we've had general activities just to welcome folks back to school, but also a ton of information about the science of reading and the Alaska Reads Act for our parents. And so I wanted to segue into that conversation. If there are parents and community members, grandparents, guardians listening to this podcast, what are some things they can do to help their students at home be successful?
So I'm glad you talked about the science of reading and parents. Again, if you're at your school, you might find a brochure like this. We have brochures about the science of reading. We have brochures about the Alaska Reads Act. So you can get information there. And you've probably heard before that parents are the first teacher. And I just want to reiterate that not only are you the child's first teacher when it comes to reading, but you're also their first teacher in laying that background experience and the foundation of just life experiences in general. We talked about vocabulary, and you have to have had experiences and wonderful enriching opportunities in order to read a story and make a connection with it. If I've been out in a rowboat with my grandpa, then when I come across a rowboat in the story, I can make that connection. So, and those are experiences that we can provide at the school, but not nearly to the same, excitement level that families can. So
yeah. And I want to jump in on that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's such an easy way for parents to engage with their students, that vocabulary that you and I take for granted, even as we're driving around town, just narrating like what you're seeing and having conversations about those individual things provides so much context for our kids and students. So
build vocabulary everywhere while you're driving, when you're at sports, when you're in the grocery store. If you have an emergent reader, if you have an early educator reader, I like to label everything in the house.
Yeah.
Like put a sticky note on the door, and when you go to open the door, what does that say? Door. Yeah. And then you open it up. So that's a great way to build vocabulary and just word recognition associated with items in your home. So label everything in your home. Talk about reading. Be excited about what they're reading. Be excited about what you're reading. And another fun thing that kids can do is just play with words. So, this is a rhyming game you can do in the car. You can also do it, again at the dinner table or the kitchen table. I used to do it at the cereal bowl, and just have them like swap that out. And it could be a mental thing like cat, and then you'd be like, what could you replace in the word cat to make a new word? Hat or cap, and just have them play with words. That's a great game for young kids, and it helps them manipulate those words and those sounds in their head. And you don't have to be anything other than just a little bit playful with your kid. And those are excellent things to do.
Yeah, excellent. Anything else you want to add to that, Chane, that you can think of that our parents can focus on as they're working with their children?
I would just add that we have lots of things on our website that the teachers or the families can go to. And then if, we haven't talked about them yet, but if a family gets a RAP plan, they're going to get a list of things that they can do specifically with their kids that will help them work on the specific skill that they need to work on at that moment. So that's something that will be coming in the next month or so.
And can you tell us what the RAP plan is?
Yeah, the RAP plan. So that can makes us, it's going to force us to kind of go backwards a little bit. So all of our K through 3 kids are going to take a test called M-Class. The M-Class is very similar to what we've taken for a while, Ames Web. And the kids should be kind of familiar with the way it sets up. But basically what we test is, do the kids know their letters? Do they know their sounds? Can they kind of do what you were just saying, play with words a little bit? Can they hear the different sounds in a word? So in the word jump, can they hear j, p? And can they separate those out? And once we get that data back, we can look and see, okay, well, this student needs to work on this specific skill. Now, what happens then is that the teachers will work on a plan called a RAP plan, and that plan will designate what the skill is that we want to work on, how often we're going to work on that specific skill, how many days per week, how many minutes per day, and then how we'll work on that skill. And then a little bit later, we'll progress monitor. You said that word earlier. We'll kind of monitor where they are, see how well they're doing. And then if they're doing well, but they need to keep going, we will. If that particular intervention, there's that word again, isn't working, we'll try a new intervention. And if it's worked so well that they've mastered that skill, we'll move on to the next skill. But that RAP plan lays all that information out. Teachers will meet with parents to talk about that RAP plan, to discuss it and say, here's what it all looks like. And then that way parents know what's going on also. And that RAP plan will also be in Power School. So parents who are into Power School and they check things all the time, they'll be able to look at that when they need to also.
Perfect. And can you remind me again what time of year RAP plans we'll start seeing that on Power School?
Yeah, absolutely. So that assessment that I talked about, M-Class, that's actually done 3 times a year. The first window, we're coming to a close of that window. So RAP plans are going to be kind of put together for the next 2 or 3 weeks, and they should be ready to go after that. So when parent-teacher conferences come around, teachers should be able to talk to their parents right then. If their student has a RAP plan, they'll be able to see it right then.
Perfect, yeah. And I know we're going to be able to provide parents and guardians with a ton of information and resources and how they can help their students, how we're helping their students. I have 2 elementary age kids, so this is something that's super passionate to me. I'm coming to our teams on a regular basis, challenging them on how we can better show parents the resources that we have available for them and access to those resources. I think that's a huge factor in our students' education is the parent and guardian support at home. And anything we can do to push that needle and have more engagement at home is only going to help our students. And so a couple of things that we're doing in my household right now, my students went through the iReady diagnostic. And so on their iPads at home, they've got iReady through ClassLink so they can go on there and continue working on their pathway in both reading and math. I am an educator, but I'm not an elementary educator, so by no means am I an expert of providing that instruction for my students, but that's one way I can definitely help them out with that. There's also this new tool that my daughter just this morning was working with, Amira. Really cool stuff. They read, it reads a sentence, they read a sentence, it listens to how they're reading and provides them feedback on that reading, pulls out specific words to have them read the words, blend the words. So really some cool stuff. I think we're in an exciting age of education that we have a lot of tools at our disposal that we hadn't had in the past to help students out. And you don't need to have any experience at home. Obviously, I feel very blessed. I do have the device and the internet connection. We are a one-to-one district, so if we don't have the devices at home, we can work with our individual schools to provide those devices and make sure that your students have access to the supports that they need.
Absolutely. I think it's great that your daughter is enjoying that so much and that that's a connection that you guys are having. So.
It's really cool.
Yeah,
I mean, especially as a superintendent. And I come from a secondary experience. And so, as I'm learning about the science of reading and the READS Act, all of this is brand new to me. And so then it's very exciting to see it firsthand in my children's lives. And we're going to walk through all of this as well. They just got done taking the M-Class screener, and we'll go through the RAP plans and all of that. And so it is really helpful for me to see as a parent. And, I'm experiencing this firsthand, not only as superintendent as a district, but as my most important role as a father.
Yeah.
So one of my themes for the year and one of my passions is improving literacy in the district. And we've heard a lot about the importance of it, but I am curious, what is the big why? Like, why do we care so much about the importance of literacy for our students?
So I'll jump on that if I may. I've said before that reading is a gateway skill. It's a gateway skill to all other learning. It's a gateway skill to even future health, your health. There's studies that show that people who have appropriate literacy skills are better at managing their own health in the future. They're better at financial decisions in the future. They have better outcomes for employment. I mean, so it's not just academic success, it's life success. And if we want our students to be prepared to be successful in middle school, if we want them to be prepared to be successful in high school, if we want them to be prepared to read the manual in a CTE class, they have to be able to read, and they have to be able to decode that and make meaning out of it. So reading is a civil right that we are obligated to provide for our students as a foundational skill. Reading didn't come easily to me as a student. And so I was intelligent and capable, but it took a little extra effort for me to become a reader. And if I hadn't have had that effort put into me as an elementary student, I'm sure that my life would have turned out differently. It's because I was able to become a reader that I was able to continue to succeed, and also that I'm passionate about giving that opportunity to kids. So, I mean, it all comes full circle, but I just know how important that is. And I think that it's something that we can never give up on. So if they didn't get it at third grade, they're going to get it again. If they didn't get it, if they're in middle school and they're struggling, we are not done helping them. So I just think that every student needs to know that we believe in them and that they're worth our effort.
Absolutely. Yeah, every one of our students that goes through our schools and graduates, we want to make sure that they're illiterate citizens and that they're able to go out and pursue their passions. And I love, last time we talked a little bit about CTE, and that is so important. A lot of people have this misconception that, well, my student or my child or that kid over there, he likes to work with his hands, so he's probably not going to need all this literacy stuff you guys are talking about, right? And that's just not the case anymore. Those technical manuals are dense, they're thick, they're hard, and so they're going to need just as much literacy skills as anybody else. So, Chane, what's percolating in your mind in terms of the why of literacy?
I honestly don't think I could say it any better than what Kate. You should have me go first and have her follow up. But
your thunder.
I would just say that it is a quality of life issue.
Mm-hmm.
It's an economic issue. There's data out there that shows that about 70% of the grown-ups that are in prison cannot read on a fourth grade level. And then reading opens up those possibilities, like you said. There are other studies out there that show that when folks come out of prison, the odds of them are going back to prison, if they don't learn to read, are about 67%. And if they learn to read, there are two different studies. One drops it down to 36%, and one drops it down to about 16%.
Wow.
So the idea that, number one, if you don't read when you're young, then you'll never read. That's not true, because people can learn to read at any grade level or at any age. And for our purposes, we want to hit not just these K3. We've been talking about K3 today, but for our purposes, this is a K-12 issue. We want to hit those other kids when they're older too.
So what it sounds like you're saying is reading is life-changing no matter when it happens.
Absolutely.
Life-improving no matter when it happens.
Right.
Boom. I think you just dropped the mic, Kate. I think that's a great way to end. And that was beautifully said by both of you. And I just want to thank you, one, for being willing to come on the podcast. I know that's not easy, but even harder is your just day-to-day work and passion for our students and staff. You've done a tremendous amount of work around getting us ready to implement the Alaska Reads Act and ensuring that we're providing great instruction in the classroom. So thank you to both of you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thanks.
absolutely. So we'll wrap this up. We are going to have a part 2 of Alaska Reads and the implementation that we've got in our district. We're going to do a deeper dive with one of your coordinators and a couple of our teachers in the school district. So definitely looking forward to that conversation about what it's looking day to day in the classroom and get some teachers' perspective for that.
If I could just put a plug in for the work that Chane has been doing with our teachers. I know this is launching this year, but there was a whole year's worth of work done with educators. We call them the IDEA team, and they have been the backbone and the heart of our planning. And so, yes, Chane and I get the good fortune of being the face of this, but there are educators in every school that have been part of our planning for this for over a year to get us where we are. And I just a huge shout out to everybody that's on the IDEA team.
Well, I'm so glad. Yeah, I'm so glad you mentioned that. I would have kicked myself if we wouldn't have, because, you know, the work that we don't do it in isolation. It's never our work. It's the people around us. And the model that you guys worked through of bringing those IDEA teams together has been tremendously successful. And a huge shout out from me to those teachers and educators on the IDEA team. They've made some amazing resources. They're the driving force behind a lot of the decisions we've made and provide just great, insightful information as we're walking through this. So thank you to that team and the people that are serving on it and that continue to work with us on that. So, all right. Well, thank you very much. I'll wrap it up. Looking forward to the next episode to continue to talk about Alaska Reads and the implementation here in the Fairbanks North Star Borough School District. All right. Thank you.
Thank you for embarking on this Alaska EdVenture with us. Hit that subscribe button and we'll meet you on the next episode.